Nobody in Springfield remembers what November costs. They remember the fun parts, the costumes, the strange, non-canon stories where the world breaks and nobody questions it. Vampires, ghosts, sentient fog, cursed dolls, things that peel themselves out of shadows and speak in voices that just don't match their mouths. But by December, it's all gone. Reset. Safe. That's what everyone believes. But if you watch closely, really closely, you'll notice something the show never explains. The tire fire burns harder after every Halloween. Not brighter, not bigger, but hungrier. A former background animator, one of the many names buried deep in the credits that no one ever looks up, once posted a series of messages late at night on a private animation board. They weren't written like a story. They were written like someone trying to explain something before they lost the ability to. He said that the Halloween episodes weren't written the way people think. They weren't just ideas. They were records. Every October, something slips into Springfield. Not metaphorically, not as a gag. Something actual. The rules of the show loosen. The boundaries that keep everything contained. The reset, the logic, the repetition thin out just enough for things to pass through. Things that don't belong in a place where nothing has consequences. And those things don't leave when the episode ends. They linger in the background, between frames, inside scenes where they were never drawn. At first, the crew didn't notice. Why would they? It's a cartoon. Things are supposed to be strange. But then, assets started changing. Backgrounds that didn't match previous versions, shadows that weren't tied to any object, shapes and reflections that no one had animated, and always the tire fire. It was supposed to be a joke, a looping gag, a constant. But over time, it became something else. The animators said they discovered it by accident, and compositing error. A test render where a Halloween creature, a tall, stretchered thing with too many joints, was supposed to be removed from a scene. It wasn't. It was still there. But not in the frame. It was inside the fire. At first, they thought it was a layering issue, a mistake made in rendering, so they isolated the fire, stripped away everything else. And there it was. Not flames. Not really anything, but movement. Dense. Layered. Pressing against itself. Shapes trying to form, but failing. Then forming again, and failing again. The fire wasn't burning fuel. It was processing something. And that's when they realised what had been happening every year. Everything that comes through during those Halloween stories, every creature, every warped version of a character, everything that shouldn't exist in Springfield, gets gathered up, dragged piece by piece to the edge of town, to the dump, and fed into the fire. Not to destroy them, to reduce them, to break them down into something that can't hold shape anymore. Something that can't think, that can't remember, and can't come back. November ends, December passes, and the fire works constantly, day and night, grinding through whatever came through. And if the year was normal, if the stories didn't go too far, that's enough. By the end of December, the fire had consumed everything. Springfield stabilizes. The world resets. But some years, there's too much. Too many stories. Too many things that push too far past what should exist. Things that resist. Things that hold together even as they burn. The animator described watching a slowed down render of the fire late one night. Frame by frame, inside the flames, something stood. Not squirming, not dissolving, standing, perfectly upright. It didn't move with the fire moved around it, and for one frame, just one, it turned. Not toward the scene, not toward anything in Springfield, but toward the viewer. And that's when the audio began showing up. Not in the original design, not in any sound library, low, layered noise buried under the crackling. Like multiple voices speaking at once, forced into something that almost resembled flame. The team isolated it. They should have resisted the urge. It wasn't random noise, it was complaints. Dozens of overlapping voices, all straining against each other, all trying to say something through a medium that wouldn't let them form words. Except one. One voice always made it through. Clearer than the rest. Closer. Not enough. That's when they understood the real problem. The fire will never stop asking. It doesn't care if November is over. It doesn't care if the monsters are gone. It only cares that it's still hungry. And then January comes. There are no more Halloween things left to burn. No more creatures. No more anomalies. No more excess. But the fire doesn't go out. It can't. Because if it does, even for a moment, everything it's holding together, everything it's keeping down, will come back all at once. So the town has to compensate. Quietly, consistently, without ever acknowledging it, they feed it something else. Not the main characters, no, never them. They are fixed points. If they change, everything collapses. But the others, the ones in the background, the ones who don't matter, the ones that can be replaced. Or so it seems. The animator started noticing patterns. Familiar faces disappearing after the holidays. Recurring background characters who just stopped showing up. No explanation. No mention. No gaps in the story, just gone. At first, the animator assumed it was normal production turnover. Design changes, new models, until he saw one of them. Late in a render. Not part of the scene, not interacting with anything, just walking. Slowly. Across the very edge of the frame. Away from the town. Toward the glow. The tire fire burned louder in that sequence. Deeper. And for a split second, the animator saw it inside again. Not shapes this time, not vague movement. People. Not fully formed, not intact, but definitely and eerily recognizable people. Faces stretched thin across the motion of the flames, eyes that stayed in place a fraction too long before dissolving, mouths that opened not to scream, but something worse. The mouths were opening in recognition, like they understood where they were, what they had become. They weren't leaving, and they had accepted their fate. The animator tried to report it. He tried to ask why certain characters were removed, why the fire was never allowed to change. He was given a single answer. Flat, immediate. Like it had been said many times before. It balances the overflow. After that, he stopped asking. His final post was written all at once. No edits, no corrections, just a block of text that read like someone was trying to warn people who couldn't possibly understand. He said the worst part wasn't the fire. It wasn't the things inside it. It was what happened when it almost went out. Because once, during a test render, it did. For a single frame, no flame, no glow, no movement, just absence. And in that frame, everything that had ever been fed into it, everything it had been holding down, started to come back. Not emerging, not rising, simply remembering how to exist. The file corrupted before the frame could complete. The fire snapped back in the next instant, stronger than before. But the animator saw enough. His last line was incomplete, cut off mid-sentence. If it ever stays out too long enough for them to... No one knows what he meant. But you can see the effects if you look closely, especially early in the year. Crowd scenes feel thinner, quieter, and sometimes, if you pause at the right moment, you'll see someone in the background who isn't moving, isn't blinking, isn't reacting, just standing there, facing away from everything else, toward the edge of the frame, toward the distant, constant glow. And after a few seconds, they'll start to walk, slow and steady, like they already know where they're going, like something is pulling them, because November always comes back. More stories, more things that shouldn't exist, and the fire, the thing everyone thinks is just a joke, is the only thing keeping all of it from coming back at once. It has to stay lit, no matter what it costs.
Ha 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 ha!